Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Jelly Bean, also known as the 10th generation F-150. When the Pretty Boy trucks first hit the market, I was just hitting my teenage years, and this was my least favorite of the Pretty Boy trucks. But now that time has tested all three of them, this is definitely my favorite by far. In 1994, Dodge hit us with what we call the second generation Ram, and for those of you who weren't there, it was a very important moment in automotive history. No part of that truck looked like anything that had been fitted to a pickup truck before. Pickup trucks were supposed to be square. This thing was round. It was angry looking, futuristic looking. It looked like very aggressive intercourse. There's nothing in modern times that I can compare it to as far as shock value goes. It's like going from old-timey DOS to Windows XP. Sorry guys, I got out of computers like 12 years ago when Windows XP went away. It was like going from an old 8-bit system to an Xbox Series S. It was completely different. It's really hard to explain. It still doesn't really look like anything else, this one especially. But after a while we found out it wasn't without problems. It had interior issues, the dashes would crack, the steering bushings would go out, they had wiring issues. It's the first truck I've ever seen burn out a PCM jump starting another vehicle. It's also the first truck I've ever seen that had to go to a dealership where you paid $500 to have that PCM replaced and programmed. They had transmission issues too, and it's the first truck I've ever seen that ran poorly when an O2 sensor was shorted out. At the time, O2 sensors weren't that important. They were the government light. All they did was turn on a check engine light on the dashboard. They had no control over the vehicle. So 3 years later, enter the Jelly Bean. Boo, this thing sucks. It looks like a tall probe. Where did the 351 go? Why do we have this overhead cam crap? How come I don't have double wishbone up front? It's got CV axles like a front-wheel drive car. This thing sucks. Nobody gave a crap about this truck. The old 4 Big 5 lug pattern didn't fit on this thing either. They went to metric. This truck sucked at the time. What the hell is Lariat? Anticlimactic. Ford sucks. But then, 2 years later came the truck we were all waiting for. The one I was waiting for especially. 5 years after Ram released their first Pretty Boy truck, General Motors' Pretty Boy truck came onto the market. And it didn't matter if it was the best truck or not. We were going to call it the best truck, no matter what. There it is, first generation Silverado. Great engine. Great engine. It had a great engine. And a great engine. No, seriously, there wasn't one redeeming quality about this truck other than its engine. We didn't care. The bow tie ruled. Yay, titties and beer. No, seriously though, this truck really sucked. These tiny little mirrors were exactly like the ones on the Jelly Bean, leaving a lot of us to believe that they were made by Ford. But that engine. At just a couple years old, the ball joints would sever and the entire spindle assembly would fly off the truck, leading to many lawsuits. But that motor. Door cards came loose, handles would snap off, lock assembly would fall out, power switches would just stop working, seats would collapse, buttons would fall or wear off the dashboard, the cup holders would break off. But that engine. Rust issues. When it would work, the four-wheel drive absolutely sucked. Without serious modifications, these trucks were useless in the snow and mud. But that engine. And it was one of the best, if not the best engine ever made, but every single thing it was attached to was garbage, nowhere near as good as anything on any of its competitors' truck, and it was the last one to the party. It knew what it was up against. Some might argue that the transmission in this truck was better than the one that came in the Dodge of the time. I would say maybe a hair more reliable, but definitely not better. This is a 4L60. The 700R4 was a 4L60, with some minor improvements, but nowhere near enough to make it good. I'm gonna get a lot of hate for that one, but it needed to be said. Holy crap, how long can we live with that delusion? And why did it take them so long to change it? It was literally the same truck till like 2007. Ford had gone through 2 major changes by that point, and Ram had been through 3. There it is, that's more like what I'm talking about. Angry intercourse. Mikey's a lucky man. Fully facing the reality of the situation, the F-150 kept up with the Ram off-road, running circles around the Silverado. The interior held up better than both, with seats that didn't collapse and dashboards that didn't crack. Its 5.4-liter overhead cam engine did feel a little bit wheezy and tired compared to the other two, but it did everything you asked of it. And unfortunately, the F-150 handled much better than the other two. Thankfully, there were some problems. You could get a coolant leak in the front of the intake, which, looking back on it, doesn't seem like that big of a deal. And occasionally they would spit out a spark plug, which really wasn't that difficult to fix either. These pillars weren't strong enough to support the vehicle if you flipped it upside down, but none of these trucks were that safe in that era, and Ford was the first to even try to fix it with their next generation. Oh, I know, there was a couple of years that were recalled because the headlight switch would set the dash on fire and your whole truck would burn down. There, take that, stupid Ford.